Do you ever have to have a difficult conversation? You know, there's something going on, there's a problem that's been brewing, there's an issue with somebody you care about or somebody you love, and you've got to have a conversation and you hate it. Well, you know what? Most of us feel the very same way. But God's Word is crystal clear. In Romans 12, verse 18, it says, "Insofar as it depends on you, be at peace with everyone." Now, we love the part of that that says be nice and be kind and be gentle and all the things that make things peaceful on one side of the equation. But on the other side of the equation, how can we be at peace with someone when we're holding some resentment or there's some kind of an issue that's constantly keeping us separated, keeping that animosity alive? We have to have a tough conversation. We've got to share something and be open about something or confront an issue that's a problem. And so I wanted to suggest for you today some simple steps that will help you feel empowered and ready to have that conversation, to speak the truth in love, as Paul tells us, but to do that in a way that's direct and clear and hopefully gets to the desired outcome of bringing reconciliation and a better relationship. So, here are the steps. Number one, pray. Prayer has got to be our first choice in every situation so that we go to God and we seek His help and His guidance. We ask Him for the words and we do the things that He invites us to do. That is, cast every burden, every problem on Him, knowing that He not only hears our prayers, but answers them. Number two, we've got to get help. If you've got a tough conversation, that probably means that you haven't known exactly how to handle it or what to say or how to go about it on your own. And so before you just launch into it, seek some guidance, whether it's from a faithful Christian friend or a pastor or some other counselor or mentor, but get some help because God's given us people in our lives, relationships that we have that He intends to help strengthen us and prepare us and to help carry our burdens. Step number three, we've got to be prepared. You know, it's so easy to not want to think about this and sort of allow the conversation to come up and then to launch into it by the seat of our pants. Wrong. That's a bad decision. We've got to enter into it, number one, recognizing we probably don't have all the facts. And so in order to be prepared, we've got to enter the conversation in a way that allows communication about what's happened. We may be misunderstanding completely. We also have to think through the other person's perspective, not just seeing it from our angle, but how do they see it? How are they going to feel about it? How are they going to react? Now, we've got to know for sure that it's probably going to be stressful. You're going to feel stressed, and the minute you bring up something of importance, the minute that difficult conversation starts, it's going to be stressful with the other person. So to deal with that stress, you've got to be clear about your purpose. What is it you're trying to accomplish? Why are you having this conversation? You know, if you're just having it to make the other person uncomfortable, cancel. Chances are you're having this conversation so that you can get past a rough spot in your relationship, or you can help them to see a problem or an issue that's going on in their life so that everything gets better. Also recognize that when you have this difficult conversation, at least for a time, your relationship may take a hit. It may be a time where there's a distance, you know, that awkward feeling between the two of you. But if you approach it well, there's a good chance that the relationship will move forward in the long run, better and stronger and more open. Now, step number four, you've got to make some decisions. And you've got to make these decisions ahead of time. It's not a game time call. You've got to make the decisions ahead of time. And number one, as I said a moment ago, you've got to have a goal. You've got to be crystal clear on what you have to accomplish. You also have to remember, God is in the miracle business. And if you've asked Him to help, if you've committed this to Him in prayer, if you're seeking His guidance and listening even as you move through this conversation, if your goal is to build that relationship or to help a brother or sister in Christ see a problem in their life, then you know that God is right there in the midst of this and He can do amazing things. So be optimistic. Don't enter into this, you know, with your head held down and with all kinds of regret and remorse. Be optimistic and positive because what you're doing is a good thing. Now, you've got to be honest. We do not help anyone if we don't tell the truth. While we tell the truth and we're clear about what the concern is, we do it in a loving way. That's that passage, speaking the truth in love. In a loving way, in an honest way, in a clear way. That's what it means to speak the truth in love. Now, when you begin to have that conversation, You've got to make a decision ahead of time that even if that person becomes defensive, even if they lash out as you bring up the topic, you have to be peaceful. You're not in this for a confrontation that ends up with people angry or the relationship destroyed. You're in this because you care enough about that person to talk about this difficult subject. So decide, no matter what's said, no matter what those initial reactions are, you're going to be at peace. You know, giving grace, being a gracious person, means being kind. And if you enter into this conversation knowing that you love this person and that you are going to continue to love them no matter what happens, that will allow grace to flow through you. Number 5, when you actually have the conversation, there's some things that I want you to keep in mind. Number 1, have that conversation in private. Don't ambush someone. Don't catch them in a moment where there are witnesses around, so that you can feel like you're in the right, or whatever thought may go through your head. If it's a difficult conversation, if it's a sensitive topic, have it in private, the same way you'd like someone to have those conversations with you. In addition, plan ahead. Don't do this in the spur of the moment. That never works well. It may seem at the time, this is the time, this is go time, let's do it now. But the chances are you're not going to be prepared. And if you're not prepared, then the opportunity for this to be a successful conversation falls off the cliff. In addition to that, you've got to get to the point. Sometimes when we're nervous, we tend to waffle around and go all kinds of different directions, kind of avoiding the topic altogether. And we can get through half an hour, 45 minutes, an hour's worth of conversation, and the person on the other side knows it's something difficult. You've made a big deal about having this private conversation. Get to the point. And so do it, but do it patiently. Also don't be in that mode where you blurt it out and you say it in a rude way or in an unkind way. Be patient, but be efficient. Get to the point. The other thing is, slow down. And I don't mean the pace of your conversation. I mean, slow your heart and your mind down enough so that while you're having this conversation, you're praying. You want God's guidance. You want His Spirit to fill this conversation and for God's purposes to be accomplished. So allow God to be a part of that conversation by continually opening your heart and mind in prayer for His guidance. The other thing is, listen. Listen more intently than you ever listen, because there may be facts, there may be details, there may be things missing in your knowledge that absolutely change the direction of this conversation. Don't be afraid of that. You're hoping that there's something that you don't understand that makes this conversation unnecessary. So listen carefully. You've got to be clear, prepare in advance, and think it through so that what you have to say is crystal clear. And be kind. You love this person enough to step out of your comfort zone and have this conversation in the first place. So don't blow it all by losing yourself in the midst of the frustration or the misunderstanding or the tension or the defensiveness. Be kind and be loving. Number 6, the aftermath. These conversations, at least initially, seldom go as you hope. And I'm not saying that to discourage you. I want you to be prepared that when there's a difficult conversation, when someone's been confronted with something, when they feel those defensive reactions, that it tends to be a little bit of a trauma. So understand, it's not going to go perfectly, it's not going to be easy, but also understand that if you have a follow-up plan, if you have a thought in your mind of how you're going to continue to keep the doors open, you're going to continue to work to rebuild the relationship, rebuild the trust, help them to understand your love for them, it's going to go better than you imagine in the long haul. Also, know this for sure. You are only one member of God's team. And so a part of our prayer and a part of our approach and part of what takes some of the burden off our shoulders is realizing that when we lift this situation to God, we know that God has lots of other people in this person's life, lots of other people who can be a part of His bringing a solution, of His bringing a change or an improvement or whatever it is that's needed. Now, you have to have clear boundaries. Sometimes we want to help too much. That's enabling. Sometimes we want to just get away from it altogether. That's being unloving. We've got to find that balance in the middle where we continue to help and we continue to engage and we continue to support, even if that change doesn't happen right away, but we do it in a healthy way. We do it in a way that's pleasing to God. I also want you to keep in mind that when you have a difficult conversation, it's possible that the relationship that you have with that person will be over. But it's also possible that it won't. And that's what we're praying for. That God not only uses you to make a difference and to bring about a change, that God uses you to strengthen the relationship you have with this person. That they come to the realization that you love them enough to have a tough conversation. That's what Romans 12:18 is all about. If it's possible, as far as it depends on you, be at peace with everyone. By the way, a couple of other things you need to remember. Keep confidentiality. If you had this confidential conversation and it's a tough topic, you need to honor that person by keeping what you have to say to them confidential. They may choose to break that confidence, but you have a responsibility. It's your honor and your love that keeps that conversation confidential. And then when all is said and done, remember your purpose. You know, all of us have times in our life where we have to have difficult conversation, and like I say, none of us like it. But I pray that these thoughts and ideas, these scriptures, will be a blessing to you and encourage you as you face those conversations, and with God's help, as you come out of them better and with better relationships.